So Bitcoin dropped more than 50% from the top before putting in a low at the start of February. And ever since then, the market has mostly been moving sideways. We have seen some small rallies, but nothing that really breaks structure or confirms a strong move back to the upside. Now, because of that, a lot of people are starting to believe that the bottom is already in. And to be clear, that could of course be the case. Anything is always possible in this market. But when you zoom out and actually look at the history, the indicators, the current state of the market, it starts to tell a different story. Because yes, a 50% drop is significant. But in this video, I want to explain why a 70% drop from the top, give or take a few percent, is still a very likely outcome. So let's start with Bitcoin on the weekly time frame. This is where we can really see the full history and how these cycles have played out. If you take every bull market peak, which so far has happened every post-halving year, and measure the drop from the top to the bear market bottom that follows, you'll notice something very consistent. Bitcoin typically drops somewhere between 77 and 87%, and this isn't just one cycle. It is something we have seen repeat every single bear market. So when people hear something like a 70% drop, it sounds extreme. But when you zoom out, it's quite normal actually. Now, the main argument against this is this bull market top didn't have a euphoric phase like we have seen the other times before. And that's a fair point. If you were in the 2025 bull market, it definitely didn't feel like the previous bull markets. We didn't see the same level of hype or retail mania. Even if you look at something like the RSI, we didn't reach those extreme overbought levels we have seen before when topping out. Normally you would expect the RSI to push into the 90 plus range during those euphoric phases. But this time when we topped, we weren't even in the overbought zone. So naturally, people assume if we didn't have that euphoric top, maybe we won't get a brutal bear market after it. And logically, that makes sense. But markets don't always follow logic. But there is actually a period where we saw something similar happen. And that's 2019. Back then, Bitcoin didn't top on euphoria either. There wasn't that same extreme hype or excitement, but what happened after it topped is what matters. First we saw a drop of over 50%, which is similar to what we have already seen now. And at that point, a lot of people believed the worst was over, but it didn't stop there. The market didn't recover. Instead, it slowly rolled over again and eventually extended into a 70% plus drawdown from the top. So the idea that Bitcoin needs a euphoric top to drop over 70% is simply not true. Now, of course, back in 2019, this move happened because of the COVID recession. And while it is extremely unlikely we're gonna see a same scenario again, we can't ignore the current macro environment. We are seeing signs of slower growth and heading towards a recession environment and a general shift to a risk-off environment. And in those types of conditions, Bitcoin tends to struggle. So while macro alone doesn't guarantee anything, it does support the idea of further downside. Another important thing to look at is Bitcoin's realized price. This represents the average cost of all holders. Right now, it's sitting around 53,000. And historically, this level has played a key role in bear markets. Because in every previous cycle, Bitcoin didn't just touch this level. It actually went below it for a period of time before eventually putting in the bottom. And that's usually where real capitulation happens, where weaker hands exit and stronger hands begin to accumulate. So the fact that we haven't gone below it yet could suggest that this process isn't complete. Even just revisiting that level from the previous top would already be around a 58% drawdown. And if we go below it again, like in previous cycles, that further supports the idea of a 70% drop from the top. Now, if we take a typical bear market drawdown of around 70%, that would put Bitcoin around 38k at the time of recording this video. And yeah, that sounds pretty brutal. But again, when you zoom out, it is not unusual to see this kind of downside. It's completely in line with how Bitcoin have behaved in every other bear market. And if we do reach those levels, that's where it gets really interesting from a long-term perspective. Now, looking at how this might play out, I have been comparing 2026 to 2018 a lot, because structurally it looks very similar. Back then we marked a low around February at $6,000, then moved sideways for a while, had some small rallies, but always came back down to test 6,000 before eventually rolling over again. And we could see something similar here. We might continue moving sideways, maybe test that February low around $60,000 multiple times, get some small rallies before the market decides what comes next. Now, looking at a more recent price actions, we are starting to slow down. Bitcoin is struggling to break above key resistance levels on the daily time frame, and that suggests that momentum might be slowing down here. Now, could we go a bit higher from here before rolling over? Of course we could, but overall this doesn't look like a strong continuation to the upside. Another thing that supports this idea is the USDT dominance chart. When this goes up, it usually means more capital is sitting in stablecoins and less is flowing into crypto. In other words, risk off. And right now, on the weekly time frame, we are seeing signs that it might be finding support again, which suggests that the market is becoming more cautious again. Now, this is just a scenario about Bitcoin dropping 70% from the top to the bottom of the bear market, give or take a few percent. The bottom could already be in, but when you combine historical drawdowns, the 2019 comparison, realized price, current market structure, there is still a very high possibility that we haven't seen the full move yet. And if that's the case, the biggest opportunity isn't gonna be right now. It will be where most people are too scared to buy, because bear markets usually creates the best opportunities for the long term. So yeah, let me know what you think. Do you think the bottom is already in, or are we gonna go lower from here? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.